now let's come to another situation, another scenario, which is basically nothing but that of the forestry, for which Dr. Shivani has asked me to be here. Look at three important crops. Two of them are exotics, and one of them is indigenous. Tectona grandis, as you all would be understanding, is an indigenous crop to us. Uh, and let me be also make things very clear. In Thailand, teak has moved from India. Now let's look at the Eucalyptus terricornis. It's an exotic species. It has come from Australia and Papua New Guinea. The productivity of eucalyptus in India is about 4 to 5 meter cube per hectare per year. Now we are coming up with better clones. Three of such clones have been released by the organizing secretary of this conference, Dr. Shivani Doval as well. And these clones altogether give you a productivity about 6 to 20 meter cube per hectare per year. So this is substantial gain from 4.5 to about 16. But on the other hand, if you look at the productivity of some other countries, for example, Brazil, South Africa, the productivity is average productivity. This is the national average is about 40 to 50 meter cube per hectare per year. So you could just think what the gap exactly is existing between Indian productivity and productivity of some other countries. Tectona grandis, as I said, has moved from here to Thailand. The productivity of Indian teak is about 2.2 to 3 meter cube per hectare per year, whereas the productivity of teak in Thailand is 10 to 12. Just look how ahead they have gone on a species which was an exotic there, Populus deltoides. This has come from America to India. The productivity of Indian populace in northern parts of the country is about 20 to 25 meter cube per hectare per year. But if you go to America, it's more than double. Now, what are those regions that we have failed with? So, where we have failed and where we have an important duty to catch up, where there is a possibility to increase it substantially. We will be talking those parameters one by one, and there will be few terms. I thought I would just make them clear here itself. One is that of provenance. We will be using this term very frequently. Provenance is nothing but collection of good individuals from a particular geographical location. And I'm using the word particular geographical location because this university where the organizing secretary sits is in northeastern part of the country. I would say whole of the northeast is one single province. Politically speaking, there could be different boundaries. There could be an Arunachal Pradesh, there could be Assam, there could be Manipur, Meghalaya, so on and so forth, Nagaland. Or so these are political boundaries. I'm talking about geographical boundaries. If I can make it a little more clear here, that India has got 20 geographical regions, which have, there are 20 different geographical regions in India. And in that way, we could say there are 20 broad provenances in India exist. But there are other factors also which come into it, and we can divide into different provenances. So when you use provenance as one of the tools for genetic improvement, it increases the productivity by 5% genetically. And when I say 5% genetically, it means a lot. It is not a simple job to increase the productivity of a population by 5%. Use the plus trees, the proportion goes little up. But there is a difference between provenance trial and plus trees. When you use the provenance trial, you tend to maintain high genetic diversity even in the commercial populations. But when you use plus trees, your diversity levels come down. You go to seed production area. Seed orchards or seed production area is one of the simplest tool. Not seed orchards, my friend, just pardon me for using the word. Seed production areas are very simplest way of producing seed. In perennial crops like trees, where you do not have other mean, you go to an area which is good looking, You basically isolate that area from other areas, enumerate all the trees and remove all those inferior trees and let grow those productive trees, and the seed collected from there is nothing but is of good improved quality, and then you use that seed for further commercial cultivation, and therefore this is called seed production area. So basically you do here nothing, there is an area existing, you identify that area and use it for seed production purposes. But I will two most important term, rather one important term, that is seed orchards, which can be divided into two factors, two type of seed orchards. That is clonal seed orchard and seedling seed orchard. We will be discussing this a little more. These are areas which are artificially developed for producing seeds, and therefore they are much more advanced system of producing quality seed with cheaper price, where not much investment are required to be given. These are two very good tools. And of course, one is last is the clonal stock, which we will talk a little later. Clonal stocks are the one whereby you can have greater achievements in a very short span of time. They say about 25 to 30% of the achievements can be done. However, this is not permanent. This is very temporary phase, and rather I would say this tool of clonal forestry is to be used intermittently in a long-term tree breeding program or tree improvement program. So you use it, throw it, then take for next 5 years. So you'll have to use it in segments. You have used one segment, then subside this. Take another segment, use it, subside it. So that way you can use it consistently. You can use it. So a tree improvement program which goes for years and years and decades and centuries together would perhaps be most utilized through clonal forestry in an intermittent way. So this is one of the most powerful tool, but adds nothing by its own. It can only use the results of any tree improvement program. It has no capacity to add anything into a tree improvement program basically. Now let's come to a little bit of theory. I know Dr. Shivani has told me already that this group is a very heterogeneous group. I will not go much into deep of it, but I feel it is obligatory for me to little explain how the selection is done. So basically, when you do selection, you take a population of 1,000 plants or 1,000 trees, you select few and you reject few. So this what you do is that basically you change the gene frequency of an individual or of a population, I'm sorry, using, I mean, selecting few individuals, rejecting rest. What you are basically doing, you are changing the whole frequency of a population gene frequency. And let's these three figures, I would just say, you force the selection, and once you force the selection, how could be the impact? Let's take for first example. You make a selection at this point of time. You make a selection for those individuals which you feel fall here, and reject these individuals in left and right. The ultimate impact would be after some time your the graph would be like this. Rather than this very wide graph, you would have very narrow graph. Now let's come to the second situation. You want selection to be done at this stage. I'm sorry. You would like selection to be done at this stage, and for doing this selection at this point of time, at this scale, what you would be doing, that you would be rejecting these individuals. So your population is basically skewed towards right side. So the individuals in right side would be retained, whereas the individuals on the left side would be rejected. And therefore the graph after some time, after few generations, is tend to become like this. Let's take third selection, which is called disruptive selection. Disruptive selection means I am not interested in this. I can quote these examples, these figures with proper examples, but I thought I will just explain it and later on I will be clarifying it. I don't want any individual here. Say for example, I want individuals which are susceptible to either an insect or a disease. You may ask me, few slides ago, I was telling that we need to select individuals which are resistant. We have to do everything that a population doesn't become susceptible. We have to do everything the total heterozygosity of a population is maintained. The population is quite heterozygous. But in this case, I am talking other way around, in reverse way, that I want a population which is insect susceptible to a particular insect, I am sorry, or a particular disease. How it would be done, I will tell later, and why it is done, that I will explain later. But then, after the selection, after few decades, that's how your population looks like to be. And now it is up to you. You'll have to see what the program you are conducting, what exactly has been the aim of a program, how we want, what kind of results we would like to achieve. All these strategies depend on this. So when I said plus tree selection, people think is a very easy job, but I feel this is one of the toughest jobs in any of the tree improvement program. If your parents selected are not of good quality, if those parents are not of the quality with desired characteristics, I am sure your program would not be as productive, as dynamic as otherwise it would have been. Let's take that totally impact how the gene and gene frequency has changed. When I'm using any of these methods, what will happen? This program, the graph was like this. As an individual for which I selected are tend to move towards upside. The individuals against which I have gone for selections tend to move right side. And that's how it changes. The change you feel is very small, but when you look at the perspective of population, it's a huge change. It's going to really change whole perception, whole I would say building systems of coming generations. So that's how it is going to be. Let's come now point by point. We have said plus trees. When we say plus trees, uh, tree is nothing but selection of an individual from a large population with all desired characteristics. It depends on the kind of program I need. Say, for example, I am looking for timber. I would like the stem is quite healthy, it's straight, not free, and so forth. You fix your parameters, you go in the field, you look for those parameters, and the one which which fulfills your parameters to the maximum possible becomes a plus tree. There are actually stages of plus trees. I would selection rather. I would say not plus tree. There are stages of selection. There is a candidate plus tree. This is a tree which you select in the field, and after selecting that individual, you come to the lab, you develop an index. There are different authors who have given, how the index could be developed, how the index value are generated. So once you generate those individuals, those index values of different individuals, you put them in a descending order, and the ones which get more than 80 marks out of 100 are considered to be plus trees. So there are two stages. So far we have cleared is that one is the candidate plus trees. This is a plus tree. This is a tree which has been selected in the field in comparison to its counterparts. It's good looking tree in a forest. You select that tree, you measure all the parameters, come sit with your computer, you develop an index value, and the trees which have more higher index value, you keep those trees and reject rest, and that becomes plus tree. So candidate tree to plus tree, it's only an exercise, computerized exercise whereby you reject majority of trees and select few. Now there's another category which is very important. There is elite tree. This is a tree which is next to plus tree. Once you take these individuals from the field, analyze through your computer and finalize them, they don't become elite trees. You take either clonal material from there, which I'll be speaking little later, or seeds from them. You test their worth in the field through multi-location trials, and the ones which qualify in that multi-location trial would become the elite trees. And these are the trees which are commercially viable. These are the trees we should go into the field. So let's come. I have been giving certain theoretical examples on selection, how it matters. But let's look at one single example over here. This is not at all, my friends, a hypothetical example. This is an example which we have carried out. We have analyzed whole thing. We have put in a graphical form for you. See, this was the base population which started from here and went up to this. And if you look, the kind of wide base it had, very wide base. Then the yellow ones, this is, I'm talking about the blue line. Then yellow line, if you see, we have selected few of the individuals, and as a result, we have skewed this towards right hand. And when we have skewed towards right hand, naturally the base of this population has come down. From there, we further went through an ocular selection. This was through an ocular selection. This was through little exercise at the computer. We went with a rigorous exercise, and then further we divided this population. I'm sorry, we skewed this population, and we found that this graph has gone up. So I would say, using very simple ocular system itself, very simple ocular system itself, what you have done is that you have increased here for this matter. I'm talking about height. You have increased height of this yellow population, the candidate base population to candidate plus T by 32.99, about 33%. So by simple ocular selection at candidate plus T itself, you can increase the productivity, or rather increase a particular trait to about 33%. Not can we have done it, we have achieved it. So we could increase it by 33%. By going to second stage, that is plus T selection, it can, no, I'm sorry, just from base population to this population, about 11.5 times percent of the improvement could be possible. Further, when we went to the plus T selection, using the index value, this could further be increased by 33%. So total impact using simple ocular way of selecting candidate plus T's, converting them into plus T's, that difference was 48%, which is substantially higher. My dear friends, such results, trust me, can only be possible in forestry. Go to agriculture crops, or animal breeding, or maybe fisheries, perhaps, or horticulture, perhaps you would not find that fantastic results. The one reason for this is that forestry is still an unexplored area, and this could only be further, I would say, possible when you are working with an indigenous species. If I had been working, this is an example of Melina arborea of northeastern region, where I worked for 7 years. Had I been working in an exotic, perhaps this kind of result would have never been possible, because the variability level are very less. So when I started explaining what the role of the variability and genetic diversity exists in a production population, perhaps this is what proves my point, theoretical point, with this practical approach. Let's come to progeny trial. All of us, understand when we say that, I'm son of X and Y, I'm daughter of X and Y, we always get identified ourselves with the name of the parents. My father is this, my mother is this, and therefore I'm the product like this. Or people would say, since he's son or daughter of such and such, he's like that. But I can tell you with full responsibility and scientific data, that it is not the parents who prove the superiority of the progeny. Rather, it is the progeny which is supposed to prove whether the parents are that of good quality or not. And that's how it is going to be like. See, this is called progeny trial. Progeny trial, as I said, we have taken the plus trees, we have put them in progeny, and now it would be the progeny which would evaluate the genetic worth of a plus tree, whether the plus tree is worth converting into an elite tree or not. If progeny of that does not perform to the extent, then we would say the parents are not of that good quality. But if the progeny of that performs very well, we would line it very well that the parents are of good quality, and let's convert them into elite category. So here, mind this very well. It is the progeny which calculates the genetic worth of the individual of the parents, not vice versa. So progeny trial is an essential aspect of any of tree improvement program. I will not go much into too much into the I'm sorry. I'll not go too much into theoretical aspect of it, but I would only say there are two kind of progeny trials we do. One is that of half SIP and another that of full SIP. Half SIPs are those programs whereby only one parent is known. And once you know one parent, you can only calculate what the genetic worth is to 50%. But when both the parents are known to you, you can calculate, you can analyze worth of an individual to full level, and therefore it's called full SIP. These are environmental impacts. Now we have been discussing how an individual can have an influence on whole scenario of its performance, from candidate trees to plus trees to elite trees. But what we have not spoken about is environment in which it is grown. Say for example, you work at X region or in X climatic conditions, you feel comfortable. When you move to another condition, you are not that comfortable. So you as an individual, you as a genotype are same, but it is the environment which makes you to produce your maximum or not produce your maximum. There could be another example. If I could you put it in this way, you are comfortable with one teacher, and say for example, for me maths was very difficult subject, so I am comfortable with one maths teacher, and I when the teacher teaches me, I am comfortable, I do very well. But when another teacher comes, my percentile in maths comes down, my interest in mathematics comes down. That is nothing but the environment in which a particular genotype has been exposed to. When you are exposed to an environment where you are comfortable with that, you tend to perform better than what otherwise in an adverse environmental conditions. There's a scientist called D. Leakey. He is given one simple thumb rule, and you all would be surprised to understand that he says, rather the team of Dileke says that only 10% of your performance, what you are today giving, is due to your genotypic impact. Rest 70%, 90%, I'm sorry, depends on the environment in which you are working, and then the interaction between yourself and that environment. So your performance, 90% of your performance is basically controlled by the environment, and it's only 10% of your performance which makes a big difference. Let me put an example of wheat. I am talking the impact of 10% due to genotype can be influenced, can be modified. By modifying or influencing the 10%, we have become a hungry country to food grain surplus country. You can just think what the power of that 10% has got. But on the other hand, if you look at the power of that 90%, this is substantially higher. So if you can just think of making use of those 10% genetic parameters and 90% of those environmental factors, perhaps it's going to change whole perception of any of the tree improvement program. I will not go much here. Oh,